Fear. It's one of the most powerful emotions humans can feel. It has kept us alive for thousands of years. Fear warns us when danger is near. Fear sharpens our instincts when survival is at stake. But what if fear isn't just natural? What if fear itself can be planted, twisted, and weaponized against you? What if the fear you feel every single day isn't protecting you at all, but controlling you? Imagine walking into a relationship, a workplace, even a society where fear is not just an emotion, but a tool. Where someone deliberately feeds your fears, shaping your choices, breaking your will, and turning you into their puppet. This is the psychology of fear. And it's one of the darkest tactics manipulators, narcissists, leaders, and even entire systems have ever used. Because fear doesn't just paralyze, fear makes you obey. Have you ever stayed silent in an argument, not because you agreed, but because you were afraid of the consequences if you spoke up? Have you ever kept a job you hated, because you feared what might happen if you left? Have you ever swallowed your truth because you feared losing someone's love, approval, or support? If you have, then you already know how fear can control you. Fear works because it goes deeper than logic. You can argue with reason. You can resist with willpower. But fear bypasses thought. It grabs the most primitive part of the brain, the survival system, and takes over. When fear is triggered, your body goes into fight, flight, or freeze. And in that moment, you are no longer thinking about truth or freedom. You are thinking about survival. And that's when you are most vulnerable to manipulation. In toxic relationships, fear is everywhere. Narcissists and abusers use fear of abandonment to keep you trapped. They say things like, "If you ever leave me, you'll regret it," or "No one else will ever love you." The message is clear. Your safety, your love, your very identity depends on staying with them. And so, even when the relationship hurts you, you stay. You tell yourself you can't leave. But the truth is, you're not staying because of love. You're staying because of fear. Have you ever been in love with someone who made you afraid to lose them, even though they were destroying you? That's not love. That's fear disguised as love. Fear also thrives in the workplace. Toxic bosses and manipulative coworkers know this. They use fear of losing your job to keep you silent. They use fear of exclusion to keep you obedient. They say things like, "If you can't handle this, maybe you don't belong here," or "There are 100 people lined up to take your place." And suddenly, you're working longer hours, saying yes to unreasonable demands, sacrificing your health and happiness, not because you want to, but because you're afraid of the consequences if you say no. Have you ever stayed in a job you hated because you feared the unknown more than the pain you already felt? That's fear controlling your destiny. But fear doesn't stop at relationships or workplaces. Fear has been used to control entire societies. History is full of examples where leaders, governments, and institutions used fear to manipulate the masses. Fear of enemies, fear of outsiders, fear of punishment, fear of collapse. Wars have been justified by fear. Freedoms have been taken away by fear. Populations have been silenced by fear. And the most dangerous part? When fear is repeated long enough, it becomes truth. Have you ever noticed how headlines are often designed to scare you? Crisis, threat, disaster. Why? Because fear captures attention. Fear controls behavior. Fear is the invisible chain around society's neck. So why does fear work so well? Because fear hits where we are most human. Fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of death. These fears are hardwired into our biology. When manipulators trigger them, you stop thinking clearly. You stop questioning. You obey. Fear is the shortcut to control. Imagine this. You're in a relationship where every disagreement threatens to end everything. You're in a workplace where every mistake threatens your livelihood. You're in a society where every choice is framed as dangerous. Slowly, you begin to shrink. You stop taking risks. You stop challenging. You stop being you. And the cage isn't built with bars or chains. The cage is built with fear. One survivor of narcissistic abuse said, "I wasn't afraid of him hitting me. I was afraid of him leaving me. He made me believe that if I lost him, I would lose everything." Another employee said, "I wasn't afraid of the work itself. I was afraid of being seen as replaceable, disposable. So I gave everything, until I had nothing left." Fear didn't just control their actions, it controlled their identity. Have you ever felt like fear itself was making choices for you? That you weren't really living, just surviving? That's what fear does. It narrows your life until you're no longer free. The long-term cost of living in fear is devastating. Anxiety becomes constant, self-esteem collapses, decision-making feels impossible, and over time you begin to lose sight of who you are. Fear doesn't just control your actions, it rewires your brain. It teaches you to expect punishment, loss, rejection. And so you live smaller, quieter, weaker, until you barely recognize yourself. But here's the haunting truth. Most of the fears manipulators use against you aren't real. They are illusions. They are threats without teeth. They are shadows made to look like monsters. The narcissist says, "No one will ever love you." But that's a lie. The boss says, "You'll never find another job." But that's a lie. The leader says, "Without us, you'll be destroyed." But that's a lie. Fear is effective not because it's true, but because it feels true. And manipulators know exactly how to make you feel it. Have you ever looked back and realized the thing you feared most never actually happened? That's the proof. Fear controlled you with nothing but smoke and mirrors. So how do you break free from fear? The first step is awareness. Call it out. When you feel fear, ask yourself, whose fear is this? Is this my fear, or someone else's fear planted in me? Naming fear breaks its spell. The second step is exposure. Fear grows in the dark, but it shrinks in the light. When you face what you fear, you often discover it's not as powerful as you thought. Fear says, "You can't live without me." But when you step out, you realize you can. The third step is reclaiming power. Manipulators use fear because it works. But once you stop obeying, fear loses its grip. Say no to unreasonable demands. Walk away from toxic relationships. Refuse to let fear dictate your choices. Each act of defiance weakens the chains. And perhaps the most important step, replace fear with truth. Fear thrives on lies, but truth sets you free. The truth is, you are not alone. You are not weak. You are not doomed. You are human. And fear only has power if you give it permission. Have you ever imagined what your life would look like if fear no longer controlled you? If you made choices from strength, not survival? That's not just possible. That's the life you deserve. Fear will always exist. It's part of being human. But when fear is used as a weapon, it becomes abuse. And when you recognize that abuse, you can break it. Because fear is powerful, but awareness is stronger. So here's the final question. If fear itself can be manipulated, then how much of your life has truly been your choice? And if you could finally take fear out of the driver's seat, who would you become? Subscribe to Mind Control Z for more explorations into dark psychology, manipulation, and the hidden tactics used to control your mind, because only awareness can set you free.